Okay, people call all the time and want to know, should I live in Tampa or should I live in St. Pete? Let's compare the two areas and break them down a little bit. Here we go. I'm Sam, and this is the Living in Tampa channel. We make these videos for you about what it's like to live and move to Tampa. But more than we love making these videos, we love to help you find houses to buy and sell in the Tampa, St. Pete area. We would love to be your real estate choice if you're making the move down here, or if you're moving around the area. Give us a call, text, or email anytime. We'd love to hop on a Zoom call and just process how we can best help you. So when I first moved here in 2020, this Tampa versus St. Pete conversation was in my head a lot. And I was really trying to figure out my own opinions compared to the opinions of others. Of course, locals love their spot. Of course, people that move here develop strong opinions based on the community that they join. But after being here about 3 years, I want to share some client stories and share some updates to my opinion. And let's start with some of my friends, Will and Eli, that were thinking about moving here. Will and Eli were visiting. I showed them all over the place. They were considering lake life, they were considering waterfront life. I didn't show them St. Pete because we just didn't have enough time to get all the way over here. They came over here that evening by themselves, recommended a few restaurants, and they're like, why didn't you show us St. Pete? Like, this is the coolest area. Like, they're sending me selfies from the pier, which is like right over here. They loved it. Another client, Scott and Ann, they called me and they were convinced we want to live in one of these two neighborhoods in South Tampa. So picked them up. We checked out a few new construction places in South Tampa and some like pretty swanky neighborhoods, super cool places. And then I was like, okay, let's check out this place in Snell Isle. I think you guys will really like this. And after being so convinced that South Tampa was the option, they saw Snell Isle and thought, how did we ever consider South Tampa as the option? Like, this is the perfect place for us. So I've seen it happen so many times, and that's just a couple of examples. I see it happen from a distance and I see it happen in person. So I know that sometimes people think they want Tampa and then they want St. Pete. It doesn't really happen the other way around from my experience, unless you want suburbs, then there's just not that many suburbs over here, but we'll get into that. And as I said, I've also made similar videos like this, and I see the comments that people hated what I said about downtown Tampa being better than downtown St. Pete. And we'll talk about that too. But let's set the groundwork of what we're comparing. Tampa, you see this area right here, highlighted on the map, about 400,000 people. But then everything around this is still Tampa. Most everything around this still has Tampa addresses. So the lines for Tampa are really blurry. Someone might say they live in Tampa, but they live in Westchase. But no one's going to say they live in St. Pete if they live in a suburban area of Clearwater. And that's kind of equivalent in this scenario. So St. Pete, you see it on the map, about 250,000 people, a little bit smaller, surrounded by water on this one side. Of course, parts of Tampa are surrounded by water too. But there's just not the ability for St. Pete to have this kind of suburban sprawl that Tampa has. So St. Pete's lines are a little more solid. Tampa's lines are super blurry. And real quick, let's just talk about comparative areas. So South Tampa, super popular area in Tampa. Everybody thinks they wish they lived there. I don't. The roads are just too busy. I have little kids. But South Tampa, how would you compare it to St. Pete? First of all, South Tampa's a big area, so I'm gonna lump a few St. Pete areas together, like the Old Northeast, Shore Acres, and then even on down the south side of St. Pete, Pink Street. So those are all pretty similar areas to like South Tampa overall. And then really nice area right off of downtown Tampa, Davis Island, about 3,000 homes there on this man-made island. Super nice area. The similar area over here in St. Pete is Snell Isle. Now you might question, why didn't I say Snell Isle being similar to South Tampa? Because it's just a little bit more exclusive. It has more of that Davis Island feel. Okay, other popular areas in Tampa, not talking about suburbs, I'm talking about in Tampa, like Seminole Heights. What's similar to Seminole Heights over here in St. Pete? You've got Kenwood, and then other areas that are just right around Kenwood. Whether that is Distant Heights or Central Oak Park, or it's Woodlawn and Meadowlawn, all these kind of neighborhoods, Crescent Lake, a lot of neighborhoods throughout the St. Pete area that are really similar to these older style, trendy neighborhoods in Tampa. And then let's talk about the more suburban area of Tampa proper, which would be New Tampa, so northeast side of Tampa. Recent videos about New Tampa, if you missed those are linked up above, about New Tampa and about Pebble Creek. So when you're comparing New Tampa to areas in St. Pete, you really kind of got to go west, over to like Broadwater, over to the jungles, like Jungle Terrace neighborhoods on the west side, closer to the beaches, where you have better public schools, you have a little bit more space in between houses, and less of a city vibe. Okay, that's just basic comparison. One other client, they wanted to move from Toronto, but they grew up in Europe, and they were so drawn to St. Pete because they felt like it just has more culture. And I was like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean culture? Because St. Pete and Tampa aren't that different from each other. And the things they brought up were museums, diversity, and community events. I'm curious, comment down below, what do you guys think makes a place feel like it has culture? I mean, of course, you drive through St. Pete and there's murals and stuff on the walls, and it has some like vibe to it. But I'm curious what you guys think. What makes a place feel like it has culture? Or do you even relate with that? And so this couple moving from Toronto, they felt like St. Pete had these things. The thing is, Tampa has these things too, but it serves these things to a bigger area. So it's appealing to a broader audience. It's going to have the big fancy aquarium. It's going to have the amusement parks. It has more stadiums. So there's some bigger appeal. In St. Pete, everything's a little more localized. Even the museums downtown, they just aren't huge. Or the Chihuly exhibit on Central Avenue, it's not a huge exhibit. And even the soccer stadium, all those things are just a little bit more community oriented. It's a different feel, for sure. And the biggest way that it feels different is around all these things in St. Pete, people live and own houses. Like, people live just a few blocks away from all of these things. In Tampa, not so much. The people that are enjoying these things in Tampa, they're coming from Wesley Chapel, they're coming from West Chase, they're coming from St. Pete, they're coming from Davis Island, wherever they live, to enjoy these in a central area. Sorry, there's an airport right here in downtown St. Pete, and I'm battling some airplane noise, but so that's a different feel. The community is more connected to all these things in St. Pete because they live way closer to all of these things. So someone might be walking to right here to Vinoy Park from their house, or riding their bike, or roller skates, as I just saw someone fall a minute ago. And another thing real quick, how are St. Pete and Tampa connected? Of course they are connected. There's a couple bridges that go across. There's the Gandy Bridge. So there's a few bridges going across. You see them right here on the map. It goes right across the water, or you can go up further if you're scared of going across the water or something, I don't know. And go up to Tampa Road, and it goes across on land. Yeah, it's on land the whole way. So these areas are super connected to each other. If you live in St. Pete, you're flying out of Tampa Airport, all those kind of things. You might even tell people you live in Tampa just to make it easier for them to understand where you are on the map. But let's get to the comparison. I know I said this was a Tampa versus St. Pete video, and I haven't really compared them in understandable ways for you. So let's do that real quick. And this is just really how these two places are different. Number one is the water. The water is different. St. Pete is pretty much surrounded by water. Yeah, a lot of it is the same bay that Tampa is on, but you have, easy access to the beach. But also just the water feel in St. Pete is very different. It's not a bit busy port like it is in downtown Tampa. It's just different. It's calmer, it's bigger, it's nice. Another way that they're different is the beaches. So being in St. Pete, you do have really easy access to beaches. And of course, St. Pete Beach, which is a different city. It's not like the beach of St. Petersburg. It's a different city, St. Pete Beach. And then all those along that intercoastal strip. Super nice, like nationally ranked beaches. Of course, being in Tampa, you have access to those kind of things, but it's just gonna be an additional 30, 45 minutes to get to them. It's not like you're gonna rush over to see the sunset like you might if you live in St. Petersburg. Okay, the downtowns. So it's easy to look at downtown St. Petersburg or downtown Tampa pretty simply as if it's just like one little area. Like it's just the condos and restaurants that face the bay in St. Pete. Or like in Tampa, like it's just the Channel District. But in Tampa, the downtown is more complicated than that. I would take it all the way up to, Armature Works along the river, all the way up to the University of Tampa, all the way over to Hyde Park, and kind of lump that whole area in. But that whole area is pretty congested, and once you get outside of that area, you're suddenly not in a very fun part of town. You're in a pretty industrial part of town. Where in St. Petersburg, you have the area along the water, but then you have Central Avenue right here that runs east and west across the area. And Central Avenue, now there's a bus line that runs along there that connects all the way to the beach. This whole area is packed full with good food and restaurants and bars and everything. Like, you can literally just stumble into any place and make friends and have awesome local food. Like, a lot of it is super, super local. And that's a very different thing than downtown Tampa. A lot of people visit downtown Tampa and they think it's just this area surrounded by the water. You can see it highlighted right here, these 4 districts of downtown. I would make it a little bit bigger, but with downtown St. Pete, it being really just this J shape of Beach Drive and then Central Avenue, you have a lot that you can just experience in one little stretch. A lot more than you would experience in one stretch of downtown Tampa. Downtown Tampa, if you branch it out like I have, there's a lot to experience, but you've got to get around that area and it's just not as simple. Okay, and the one thing that I think really makes St. Petersburg better for most of you, of course some of you are going to disagree, that's fine. If you've watched this long in the video, you're welcome to disagree down in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. St. Petersburg has less commercial development. Of course they have some. They're building new towers. You see, cranes doing stuff all the time. But it's not as industrial. There's not big shopping malls. There's not stuff like that like there is in Tampa. So in Tampa, you get this kind of industrial sprawl, and some of that's necessary. It's the busiest port in the state. It's a wonderful airport. You've got stadiums, you've got manufacturers, industry. It's necessary. But St. Petersburg doesn't have that because it has so many more neighborhoods. Just outside of the downtown core is all old neighborhoods that have been preserved. People love their old houses here in St. Pete. They're quirky and different from one to the next. And that's why I haven't made many videos about the neighborhoods, because locals are gonna tell me I'm wrong about where I draw the lines. We'll see, we'll do that soon. But in general, St. Petersburg is much more of a resident vibe. Residents are going into the restaurants. Residents are going into the local businesses. Residents are out walking and biking and things like that. Tampa just doesn't feel that way. People are coming into work and then going back to the suburbs. People are visiting and then going back to wherever they came from. It just feels more like a local town. And I think a lot of you would appreciate that about St. Petersburg. A lot of you would not like that about Tampa. I'm curious what you think about this whole comparison. Does it make sense? Is it helpful? I would love to hear your thoughts and hear what you have to say. And as always, if you want to buy or sell real estate here in the area, we would love to be your real estate choice. So give us a call, text, or email anytime. Thanks for coming by.